and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds, and with me today is yet another legend from the BMX world, Tracer Finn. Tracer, I gotta tell you, you have been a massive influence for many, many people over the years. For me, most definitely, your style, your grace, your courtesy has always been top notch. One thing that I feel about influencers, in my estimation, is they get overlooked often, right? We have people in our lives, our friends, our family, our neighbors, that are touching us one way or another throughout our days, because I think that's what you do. I think as a society, we help each other without any kind of expectation of something in return. I think when people think of influencers today, they think of social media, and rightfully so. That's where they get a lot of their information, right? I think the one-on-one touch isn't as common as it used to be.
Right.
I think the saying "it takes a village" expands greatly, because I know for sure my friends and my family and my neighbors growing up were huge influences, and they helped me become the person that I am today. And with your background and your story, I would love to know, your influences growing up, how you got to be where you are today. And first and foremost, you grew up in Las Vegas, right?
Well, actually, I'm from San Diego. I grew up
Okay.
near Rancho, actually, and but lived in Vegas every summer as my parents were doing shows. So
Yeah.
I lived in hotels. People say, "Oh, you live in a hotel?" I lived in the Landmark. I lived at Caesars. I lived at the Holiday Casino. Leave my bike in valet parking and ride around the strip. When people are like, "Oh, these group rides," you're like, "That's what you did. You just rode. You rode the strip." I lived on the strip. I lived in the hotels, and then I moved here full time when my parents split up, and we came to Vegas full time in about '75.
Really? Well, let's
Yeah.
start with your BMX career in San Diego. Obviously, the heyday of BMX started on the West Coast, and you were fortunate enough to be in an era that had some of the most influential photographers and athletes at that time. Um, you started right away. Like, you're in the
Well,
BMX Hall of Fame as one of the pioneers of the sport. How did you get into it, and what was that like back then?
well, San Diego was more like just like all of us. See, that's the thing, is we all have the same common story. You find a door in a junkyard, you put it up against something, you dare your friends, you goad them, and then you're usually the one bleeding at the end of the day. And I rode BMX in San Diego and rode motorcycles, and when I moved to Vegas, that's when I started racing, because we
Oh,
didn't
really?
yeah. So I lived really in the hotbed, and I look at the pictures of my bikes and what we were doing and starting on the Sprint Stingray. But Vegas really brought it out, because I came here without much to do. My dad was busy. He was doing shows, zero parental, guidance at all. They were just rock stars doing shows. So I started riding my bike and, like, down alleys, down things, and ran into people that had a number plate, and you're like, "Oh, well, your
Right.
bike looks like mine, but you got a number plate. Well, how does this work?" And so that was sort of how it got started. Was I always rode, always did everything more into motorcycles, and the people that ran the motorcycle track ran the BMX track, and I'd go out there with them and throw tires to help them, and it turned into me racing bicycles in the middle of the desert, because that was my posse. It just, okay, on Saturdays everybody went out there, and then you rode home from the races down the strip through the desert. It wasn't even, I don't want to say it wasn't a big deal. It was just growing up. It was just living.
Right. Right. And what track was that in Vegas that you raced at? It wasn't Nellis. Was Nellis around back then?
No, this was early. This is Williams Raceway, which was so in the middle of the desert. It was unbelievable. It's
Wow.
still in the middle of the desert now. And the rubber band start. There wasn't, I think the NBA tour came through maybe in like '76. And we looked like hillbillies, like literally foot on your tire for your brake, because you took out your Bendix springs and your hubs, to make a freewheel.
Oh, yeah.
Raced in shorts. It was 110. We raced in short pants. We didn't. when they came through, there was rules. You could, we'd wear, if you were hot, you take off your shirt. If you wore shorts out to the races, and we always wore a helmet. That was about it,
Right.
And so it was actually called Williams Raceway, which to me was my start. And then that sort of brought, before Desert Surf was an original skate, it was a skate park bike track. That sort of kicked us into it was on the NBA tour as the Winter Nationals. So, and also a funny side note is the first two ABA Grands were in Vegas. And
really,
they were at a Horseman's Park, and I went to it, and I, with my $5 in my pocket and my helmet on my bars, and they just said there's a race. And I mean, that's how ignorant we were to some of this stuff. And there was inspection. I didn't have a parental signature, and I just watched. Like, I didn't even know, I had no idea that it was that civilized. We were literally racing in the desert and having a really good time, actually.
That's awesome. Well, let's fast forward a little further on into your career. I mentioned your flash and your style and your technique on the bike. You can see in the photos was always immaculate, right? Incredible. What did you take from growing up, seeing your dad perform and have this presence about him that you incorporated into your BMX world?
Oh, absolutely. I thought of that because growing up with family business, it's like if your parents own a bakery at 8 years old, you're up in the morning, making pies. And
Right.
We traveled with the show, and I watched my parents, how they prepared, what they had to do to get a job, how hard they worked. You couldn't take a day off. And then everything comes together, a whirlwind. But why I always like show business is just like when the show starts, it's like somebody yelling "go." There's no stopping. There's no you know what, time out. And watching them, and then watching my parents go from, hey, can you help load this in the car? We got to load a piano up on 3 flights of stairs, just working with the show. Yeah. And then seeing my parents have to deal with the whole production, and then boom, the show goes. And it didn't matter if they had a bad day or the dog ran away or anything. And both my parents, my mom sang, she was in the show, and yeah. My dad, and we'd just be backstage, sort of watching the edges, helping out. And so watching them be showmen and really take people that were there, half of them are there because they want to be, and half of them because they're married to somebody that wants to be there, and having them take somebody that's just there into a part of the show, a part of the process. And when they're done, you look at their faces and everybody had a good time and everybody got entertained. And I think that's the key word, is everybody got entertained.
What a sense of accomplishment as well. So you got not only to see the side of the flash and the dance and the feathers and the bows and the music and everyone being so excited to see everybody, but you got the work ethic part as well, where I think a lot of people don't see that behind the scenes part, where it's a lot of work to get to the flash and dance, right? Yes. Same thing with BMX. You're doing sprints. You're riding to the race. You're riding home from the race. No one sees or pays attention to that work part. Like, to me, that's that influence, right?
Yes. Nobody wants to load out on a Tuesday night in the rain.
Nobody.
You know what I mean? Everybody wants to come in, dress sharp Friday night and leave. And, that you're absolutely right. It's the load in and the load out. You only have your window. Your moto's 30, now they're 34 seconds long, but right. you only have a moto. It's all the work before. It's all the planning. Did you get the drum riser? Did it fit in the back door of this, showroom? Did, all the little things come together. You got to smile, you got to entertain, and put it together, and then load it out and get it back to the next gig, right. While you're hustling the next one. Sort of like, it's right. Just like racing. It's just, you're never done. You're just, what's the next race? how do I get there? What's the process? When I get there, who am I going to stay with? Early days, reality is, where am I going to stay? How am I going to do this? How am I going to put this together? If I do well, that's great, but you still have to load out, get on a plane, or really mostly in a car, and travel. So yeah, I love the word you used, work ethic, because if you met my dad, who's just a pistol, that's the work ethic. You can always outwork anyway. You never have to be the best, but if you outwork people, you get lucky.
Absolutely. Right. What you're saying about, doing good at a race, I always look at it as well as contracts. Contracts in BMX are pretty much, I don't know how much value are carried in those things because they get cut all the time. Right. But the same thing for me is like, okay, what's my next contract? What's my next sponsor? Even when you just sign, when you're like, I got to make sure I do the right things to maintain this sponsors. Same with what you're saying. You've got to do the right things to maintain that show. How do I get the next one?
Right. Exactly.
Which is fascinating. And now you are officially in Vegas and you are running lights for some pretty major shows or show, right?
Yes. Up until things got on pause, 36 straight years with the same company doing the shows. So it just sort of, actually, I'm still sort of furloughed. So it's technically I'm 36 years in with the same producer, same owner, and
Sure.
went through and did star shows at the Golden Nugget, and then went through and was with Siegfried and Roy for 10 years, and then got into the Cirque process when they came up, and then building at a show now called the Rev at the Wynn, which it's sort of like a good sponsor. That they do things right, like getting on a process with a Big E or Todd Corbett or somebody that you just know they're thinking about your tomorrow. They're thinking about your loadout for you,
Right.
and to be a part of that. But I've had a great run, and I always did it while I was racing, and
Got it.
it kept me working. Matter of fact, I worked the night before I got my finger cut off at the Gold Cup race. I worked Kenny Rogers' show till loadout till 3 a.m, and then went out because the Gold Cup races were here, and just grabbed my bike and, of course, totally unprepared, but I love to race, even if you get smoked, at least you sat around with your buddies and had a good talk,
Yeah, there's something about the atmosphere, right? It's the same way when I go to mountain bike races and get destroyed in the cross country races, but I still have fun because it's the environment that you're in, which I think keeps us coming back for these things that it's not always a guaranteed thing, but man, that hustle and the process is really fun. And there's a sense of accomplishment with that for me,
Yes.
especially, like doing even this small project, my wife is like, don't call it a small project. I'm like, all right, even doing this project, it's so much fun for me. And I love it because I get to hear these stories, which are massive because they've created all kinds of cool stuff in people's lives. You have been in some pretty incredible images in Bicycle Motocross Action magazine, or was it BMX Action when you're jumping over the piano, but then you also had another Hot Shots one that turned into the Woodward logo. Was it still the same logo or did it change?
Yeah. Oh no, it changed. So the old schoolers might know, but to have a part of that little bit of history, like that, to have a sticker, like for a kid, because I'm just the kid that caught the big fish. We all had the same line out there, and I went, oh crap! So I'm gonna take care of this fish. Like I caught a big fish, and I didn't do anything different than anybody there. I put in the work, and that turned into their logo. And then now my son's been a camper at Woodward, and when I go, they really treat me good and let me ride. Foam pits, mind you, but
yeah.
That is sort of a cool little underline. I'm glad you caught that. I wanted, something sort of neat.
I mean, I'm usually really good about catching like who the sticker is, but when I saw that and finally put it together, I was blown away. I'm like, oh, how did you not see that? Because that picture in its entirety, it looks like you're 20 feet in the air. you're just completely laid over. Such good style. It's perfect. Did Bob Osborne shoot that, or did Wendy?
Yep. That was sort of my gift for doing the blow myself up, Evel Knievel jumping the piano shot. He actually, because I had never been in BMX Action Magazine until those shots.
Really?
I had never been in, but I was the Levi and Mickey Finn show jersey kid till I was 17X. I mean,
Really?
I was, if you look, and we'll share stories later, but I probably got 6 full page shots in Levi's and t-shirt and the other, just writing for the sake of writing. And Bob Osborne told me to my face, he said, dude, look at you. You look like you don't look like a pro. And he was so right. And I didn't. And then I changed my mindset. And that's when I bought a pair of racing pants that matched my Mickey Finn show jersey, and things got, all of a sudden, I mean, within a year, I went from Levi's and a Mickey Finn show jersey, which is, if they're paying my races, it's family business.
Yeah.
And then once then Miranda got me on CW, it's all about your friends, honestly.
I mean, like, nepotism goes a long way, right?
Yeah. It's it's all the stories about the buddies that connect the dots for you.
And again, your influences, right? The people
yes.
that help you along and they give you this is what this is about. Exactly.
Absolutely. I think everybody has a Mike Miranda story. So it's almost like the shooting star, you're like, that's the one. But, I followed all my local heroes that actually spent time with me when I was 11 and gave me the extra, tire, their old tire or something, those guys, like I'll say, and I'd really like to say this kid's name, but to me, Sam Meek, who will never get the credit he deserves, but he was our first number one and really set the tone for how I wanted to present myself. And that was a big deal to me, because I went, hey, because I honestly, living in Vegas, I could have done anything. You could get in so much trouble. My dad worked till 3 a.m. We didn't really have rules, and seeing what I wanted, keeping me on my bike, kept me in the game of chasing these things I wanted to do.
Right. Well, and I would think, with what your mom and dad did, seeing that also, not only is it the work ethic and seeing the stardom side of it, but also if you really want to do something, go do it and go find it and go do it.
Yeah, it's there. It's absolutely it's right. Always out there.
Right.
For the taking.
Yes. Gork told me I did one of these with him as well, which is going to post in a couple of weeks. He told me some really good Bob Osborne stories as well about how his drive and being very meticulous about the look of the magazine and what it takes to be in it. And you being in it obviously is massive. But the one, and I have to bring it up and then I'll let you get out of here. But when you were jumping your dad at the piano was one of the craziest things I had seen when I was younger. I mean, unbelievably cool. I mean, it's an iconic photo in our sport. There's no question. Yes. Walk me through that one, dude, because that was something else.
Well, it's interesting because once Bob puts you on his radar, he knew I was sort of a goofball. I was more of a jumper than a racer, and he knew.
No kidding,
probably,
right?
I feel like he knew he could get more out of me. I was just hacking it up and then trying to not miss my moto kind of kid, And he actually came to Vegas. Once I got on CW, he goes, we're going to do a shoot. And he came to Vegas, and that wasn't the original shot. The original shot we did was jumping. He wanted to recreate jumping Caesar's fountains.
Whoa.
So we brought a little kicker ramp, and we did a whole bunch of photos in jumping Caesars, and he tried all the angles. And the fountains are only really about 18 inches deep. So I'd hit this kicker, do as much as I could, only so high in the air, and then I'd land on the mossy in the fountain and then just bite it. And then soaked, and it wasn't a big jump, but the photo, and you know how it's all filmed, so it's not like he went, okay, it's not quite. He knew the photo would have looked like a 2-foot kicker ramp jumping 4 feet in the air and landing in the fountain. No clearing it. We just, in his head, it was the Evel Knievel one.
Right.
And we went to dinner, and my dad, who's always been a huge supporter, and he's a show business guy, we had actually talked about me jumping him on stage during a show.
Whoa.
And, now with Splash and, all the things that, they do nowadays, it's unbelievable. But back then we were trying to figure out a way, because I did Spotlight and I was there anyway. And we thought it would be cool to do something. And I was in it, just no landing, and the horn section was in the way, and you really couldn't, it wasn't set up for that. And
right.
So we had dinner with Bob Osborne, and my dad said, well, let's do that piano jump. And we completely put that all together after dinner, and we shot that the next morning, and we just rolled the piano out, called the band in early, because my dad did afternoon shows, so the shows were 2 and 4. So we just turned it back and rebel runned it, and we didn't have permits. We didn't. My buddy David, who's a motorcycle guy, went to engineering and got 2 4x8 sheets of plywood and a sawhorse, and we did 1 sheet to the sawhorse and 1 sheet from the sawhorse to the piano, right to the back of the piano. So if you'd look, my dad's ducking because we had no idea. Like, talk about just making something up. And there was the turnaround because that was the end of Fremont Street where people would cruise. And
oh, really?
Yeah, if you look, there's a curve, and of course it was flat landing, but we built that and just went, well, and it was just full on click. It wasn't a ramp. It was 4x8 and then 4x8.
Like a wedge.
Yeah. And that's what it just kicked. And we didn't ask for permission. And then my bike bounced into the crowd, into the casino across the street. And it was just, everybody thought it was a film shoot. And they literally blocked the street. Like, if you see some of those people, those aren't BMX fans. It's just my family and my buddy that helped me, build the ramp. And the reader board was, Bob Osborne just caught that. And I don't know if he timed it. But
what?
If you look at the other picture I sent, the next time we did it, where I'm sucking it up, and it looks like, and I mean, I'm not kidding. Any of us could have done it. Once you know how it kicks, you suck it up, and it didn't. The reader board didn't say anything, and
oh my gosh,
it was to his credit, it was his capture. Once we got the gear out there, he's like, all right, how can we do this? And that's how that came about. Is it was just, it started as a Caesar's fountain jump and ended up as the next day. And if you read at the bottom, he actually thanks the city and my dad, or, for putting it together. And, just because he knows better that what it takes to do something like that. And my dad really made that happen. I mean, how many dads will roll out their business into the middle of the street and yell, go, good luck. And my dad was scared to death because he doesn't want to get me, I definitely took slammed.
Well, that was incredible. And the fact that they didn't just put Mickey Finn up there and you got to jump in front of your dad's name, but it was scrolling by and he caught that at the right time. Even more incredible of an image. Like, that's unbelievable to me.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks. I'd like to give my dad credit, because that's sort of what parents do when they're proud of you. He never pushed me. It just sort of came up,
That's awesome. I think my dad would have done the same thing. He would have rolled the Camaro out and said, go ahead and jump the car.
Yeah.
And then my question, right, just do it. You can do it. But my thought would have been like, but I'm going to land flat ground, man. That's going to hurt my ankles.
Well, I'm 2 knee replacements in, so I've definitely paid for no landing ramp era.
Yeah, and that was our era as well. I mean, I want to get Stu on at some point and talk to him about jumping the Porsches and how that landing was.
I've talked to Lynn Caston because I'm a Stu fan. Like, I'm a fan of all these guys. Like, and I know Lynn, and Lynn just say he was soft on the bike.
Really?
Like Stu's big, and if most people would jump on a bike like that and just blow it up, and he was, hearing little things like Stu is soft on the bike. You see him in a skate park and how he rode and what a big dude he was with those short top tubes. Props to those guys. And you look at them in those photos and you go, wow, they're great riders.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's what they had to work with, right? I mean, that's what you guys had to work with as far as geometry and size of bikes. We didn't know any better. It wasn't until later on we're like, wait, if we make this front end longer, hold on, this will work.
Don't hit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I used to wear the stickers off of my handlebars because my knees would drag. I'm like, what happened to my stickers? Oh, it's from my knees rubbing the stickers off. Got it.
Yeah, but you took it to the next level and made your own frames. I wasn't like Billy. I was factory, but I wasn't that factory. There's
right.
We had Mike Miranda and Billy, we had those guys. And so Roger had me as, I was the sideshow, and I was a perfect sideshow. I'll never, ever think any different is that, and then we had Pete Lonkarovich, and I'm like, all right, I'm the sideshow. It's just, they get the wins, and I might get a picture, like it's sort of hand in hand.
Well, you did a fantastic job of it. Again, thank you so much for your time today. You were hugely instrumental in so many people's lives growing up, and with your style and what you've done and how you've parlayed that into a stellar career. Thank you for taking your time today to come and chat with me.
I'm proud to do it, man. I'm really appreciated that you called me.
Excellent. Anytime, man. Well, listen, if you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, and you'll know when we post up more stuff in the future. Tracer, again, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, man. I'll talk with you soon.
Peace. All right, buddy. Thanks.